16,000 people, one packed stadium, a career-making victory and then silence. Not the silence of heartbreak, not the kind that follows a crushing loss. This was something else entirely. The kind of silence that drops over a crowd when something happens that the English language doesn't quite have a word for yet. This is what really went down at Indian Wells. And spoiler, it had absolutely nothing to do with prize money. March 8th, Indian Wells, California. Stadium 1. One of the loudest, most electric arenas in all of professional tennis. The energy in that building? Electric doesn't even cover it. Alexandra Eala had just done something spectacular. She didn't just beat world number 4 Coco Gauff, she dismantled her. Broke her serve repeatedly in the opening set, rattled off 5 straight games, took the first set 6-2, then bolted to a 2-0 lead in the second. She was dominant. She was composed. She looked every single inch like a player who was born to be on the biggest stage in the world. And then everything flipped. Gauff started struggling. Visibly, painfully, with her left arm. She'd later describe the sensation as fireworks going off inside her muscles, the kind of pain that doesn't ask your permission, the kind that shuts you down whether you want it to or not. She had to stop. She walked toward the net. And in that single moment with 16,000 people holding their breath, the match stopped being about tennis altogether. Rackets dropped, the noise died, an entire stadium exhaled at once. Eala was standing in the middle of the biggest win of her entire career. And she didn't throw her arms up. She didn't pump her fist. She didn't celebrate. She walked toward Gauff. Not as a rival, not as the winner, but as someone who genuinely cared about the human being standing on the other side of the net. She followed her as she gathered her things. She listened as Gauff explained what had happened. No cameras staged it. No PR team scripted it. Just 2 people, in a quiet corner of an enormous stadium, being real with each other. Eala would later call it a massive moment, competing at Stadium 1 against one of the greatest players on the planet. But even her own words couldn't fully capture what her face was giving away in those few precious seconds. Now, to really understand why this moment cut so deep, you've got to rewind the clock. Earlier in 2025, Eala had already sent a loud message to the entire WTA Tour. At the Miami Open, she took down world number 2 Iga Swiatek. Then Grand Slam champions Madison Keys and Elena Rybakina fell one after the other. She banked over $332,000 in prize money during that run alone. But the money was never the point. The point was the statement. She belonged here. She'd always belonged here. The rankings were just finally catching up. At Indian Wells, she pushed even further. Her run to the round of 16 stacked another $78,000 onto her season total. But when she stepped up to that microphone after her win, she didn't mention a single dollar. She talked about the journey, the grind, the process. And then on International Women's Day, something in her voice shifted. She thanked the women who built the road before her. She called Coco Gauff an extraordinary competitor and a role model. She wished her a fast recovery. And then she turned toward the stands, locked eyes with her mother, and said the words that cracked the stadium wide open. The applause that followed, it wasn't polite clapping. It wasn't the respectful golf tournament kind of quiet appreciation. It was felt, deep in the chest. The broadcast cameras scrambled to capture it. The crowd didn't want it to end. But here's the layer to this story that the cameras almost missed entirely, and it only makes sense once you know the history between these two. It started with a DM on Instagram. Before the 2025 Italian Open, Eala, bold as ever, reached out to Gauff and straight up asked if she'd be her doubles partner. Big ask. Gauff said yes. They went on to reach the quarterfinals together, playing through elite competition with a chemistry that genuinely surprised people inside both of their camps. But the results weren't the story. What formed between them on those clay courts in Rome, that was the story. 2 young women, different corners of the world, both carrying the weight of enormous expectations. And somehow, in the middle of all that pressure, finding something real in each other. They trained together before the Australian Open. They swapped messages after wins and losses. They clowned around on social media in ways that didn't look staged because they weren't. Theirs was the kind of friendship that professional sport almost never allows. Too much is at stake. Too much is in direct competition. And yet there it was, right out in the open, for everyone to see. So when Gauff told her at the net at Indian Wells, "You're playing great," she meant every single syllable. And when Eala walked her off the court with a hand on her back, she meant that. 2. After the stadium had mostly emptied out, something else reportedly happened. Quieter, more personal. Eala had a small commemorative item with her, a keepsake she'd received weeks earlier tied to her run at the ASB Classic in Auckland. It wasn't a Grand Slam trophy. It wasn't a WTA title, but it had meant something to her. and she placed it in Gauff's hands. "Your message before my first WTA quarterfinal," she said. "That meant everything to me." Gauff looked at her, and said, "You're going to have so many more of these. You won't even remember this one." They hugged. Not the quick, obligatory kind that two competitors exchange and immediately move on from. A real one. The kind that lingers. The clip spread within hours. Friendship over rivalry started trending. Fans who watched the match live said they felt like they'd witnessed something genuinely rare, a moment in professional sport that flat out refused to be reduced to a scoreline or a stat. Meanwhile, the rankings moved. Eala broke into the WTA Live Top 30 for the very first time in her career. The wins over Swiatek, Keys, Rybakina, and now Gauff were no longer upsets. They were a pattern, a trajectory, hard evidence of something seriously building. Gauff returned at the Miami Open, faced Rybakina, and kept pushing forward. When asked about Eala, she didn't skip a beat. "She's a class act. I'm lucky to call her my friend." And that one line? That says everything. Because this story was never really about prize money. It was never about rankings, or trophies, or going viral. It was about two athletes, young, watched, pressured, far from home, who chose to show up for each other in a sport that rarely makes room for that. It was about Eala standing on the grandest stage of her career and still having the instinct to stop and ask, "Are you okay?" Behind every ranking number is a person. Behind every post-match interview is a lifetime of sacrifice. And every once in a while, on a court in front of 16,000 people, that reality breaks through in a way that no scoreboard can ever contain. That's what Indian Wells gave us. Not just a result, a reminder